Calling out my Katsu players today. That's right, it's another best 3 series, this time versus Katsu. Now, Katsu's a ninja you almost never see in the Blitz format, and that's namely because he's just completely overshadowed by Ira. Reason being, Katsu really lacks a reason to be played over Ira, since Ira is a consistency fiend that really abuses the play pattern that ninjas love with abusing Kodachis. Now, Katsu just runs into his own consistency issues on the flip of that because he's a deck that cares a lot about what cards you draw in what sequence and what resources have already been expended. And in Blitz, when you're limited to 2 ofs in a deck, and because you never really know when your opponent is going to force lethal on you and you have to block very heavily, Katsu can just really find issue in losing parts of what he needs to be a cohesive, aggressive deck. So that leads me to believe that if you do see Katsu more around the tables, it's going to be more of a control style format. So that's what we've got for you today in this control Katsu list. So really, when you're playing into Katsu, the main thing to know is that he's a deck that's really going to want to slow you down and abuse the fact that Flick Flacks are going to give his combo pieces extra block. Now, this is really strong against Levia because she has a lot of her power in her go wide turns. So when Flick Flack is played on that initial, let's say claw swing, if it's a Blood Rush turn, then you know that he's going to be blocking for way above average value that turn and can really turtle out a lot of your damage push. But, you know, these are finite resources, and you can also catch Katsu on some other awkward hands because he does run a few 2 blocks in this list in particular. It's Razor Reflex, the Surging Strikes, with the Remembrance for the fact that this is a slower control Katsu list. Now, if Katsu ever goes on the aggressive, it's the same deal as when you play against Classic Constructed. The main thing you need to be afraid of is when he Surging Strikes. You don't want this to hit. You need to cover it up so that he can't trigger his effect and start with the Whelming Gust Wave line, because that can force your equipment out really, really quickly. So that's the main thing to watch out for. Overall, this is just a way less threatening matchup than when you play against Ira, because the consistency is just not there for Katsu. And against any deck that's really trying to turtle you out, you will still find chinks in their armor. You will still just have insane value behind your already strong go wide turns when you get to play cards like your Dread Screamers, your Blood Rush, and you will also, of course, always get to go tall with your Howl from Beyonds, your Endless Maws, and you've still got Dominates in the deck in Writhing Beast Hulk and Convulsions. On top of the fact that in slower matchups, you are free to roll Scab Skins quite a bit more, and of course, any action points you net in these kind of matchups are just free damage that your defensive opponent hates to have to defend. So with that said, let's jump into this best of 3 and see how it went. Alrighty everyone, this is the gameplay for today's video, and honestly, what a strange one it is. I don't think I've ever actually played against Katsu at any Blitz event. You really just see people defaulting to Ira, or if they want to keep it spicy, they switch to Benji, if that's their ninja of choice. So Katsu really just doesn't see play in the Blitz format here, so it was a bit hard-pressed to even find a list for this video. This one today is actually created by a fellow YouTuber from the channel Fab Unofficial. So what we've got in front of us here is the die roll that has already passed, where I did win and I chose to go first. Now, I've said this before, it's always worth reiterating. In this build in particular, I really like going first because there's a lot of cards in my deck that I can just burn on turn 1, whether it be like a Sigil, Deadwood, Wrecker Romp, Beast Within, anything that I can just get into graveyard on turn 1 is really important. I'm expecting to hopefully end my turn with 1 card in grave so that when my opponent plays into me, I'm free to block with 2 cards and potentially go aggressive from right then, because I'll then have 3 cards in grave. So I really like to keep that option open. Obviously in this matchup, I'm not expecting too much aggression out of the opponent here. So there is still just merit to trying to fill the grave with whatever I can anyway. Now, in that first hand, I was left with a with a Blood Rush and a Writhing Beast Hulk in hand, and I decided to arsenal the Writhing Beast Hulk over the Blood Rush. And this is really because with a Blood Rush, sometimes you don't draw an attack to follow up with it, so having that piece in arsenal beforehand is just a guarantee that your Blood Rush can at least become Claw's attack, if not Claw's attack. So that's the priority to arsenal there. Over the Blood Rush itself, because Blood Rush itself can also just get clunky if your hand is never that full of 6s, which in this deck can actually happen because it's not as chock full of 6s as other builds might be. So what we're seeing here is Tom just starting with that very standard Kodachi into another attack, and I really wasn't expecting this third attack to be anything special. So by blocking it up, I expected that to pretty much be turn over because this is not an aggressively slanted Katsu deck. So I am a little surprised to see that Razor Reflex actually kick this Fine Center over the top, but we're fortunate in that the Fine Center is the end of a combo line. So even though Tom gets the search here with the Mask Momentum draw and the Katsu trigger, he's not able to actually find anything that threatening. It's just an extra 3 attack to end the combat chain off there. And this is actually something that when I was editing this video and looking over plays, I was really, really confused as to why I blocked with a Blood Rush there instead of just committing the Scab Skins, because obviously I had to block with something or Husk was threatened. But if I blocked with Scab Skins, then the Blood Rush was completely live because I had the Soul Harvest, Endless Maw, and of course the Blood Rush in hand with a Writhing Beastalk in arsenal. So that was truly just always better to block with the Scab Skins there, because I think at the moment I might have been doing my math wrong and thinking that if I threw Scabs in front, then Breaking Scales would still threaten Husk, but that's just not true. I would have been down to 14, not 13, so real big mistake there. Losing a Blood Rush in this kind of matchup means I lose a ton of potential that my deck has to overwhelm Tom's defenses. So at least I'm still able to return a really strong 3-card or 2-card hand in Endless Maw, but it's just not good. It was just really not the right play ever. So this does kind of skew the game a bit because now I've lost my huge aggressive push, and it means Tom's actually able to keep multiple cards in hand to be setting Arsenal and swinging Kodachis at me for more than I would have liked in this kind of matchup. So now with the Kodachi threat and that pretty front-loaded damage that he had on that first turn, I am under threat of losing Husk. So when he leads with something like Kodachi, I'm incredibly scared that there's another attack following up that not only would threaten Husk, but of course threaten Mask as well. So that's what I'm holding cards in hand to block, is the card that would scare me, that third attack. But it doesn't actually come in that turn. The card Tom has in Arsenal is a Remembrance, so it's not even an attack. I was playing around nothing there, and it actually hurt me because now I did not actually get to block with a card, which is what I really needed to do that turn, because I had a Barraging Beatdown in hand to force the graveyard to at least gain 1 additional card. So I was really hoping to block with at least 1 card there on that third attack so that I could still swing back into him. So when he just passed after the double Kodachis, I was really worried. It basically forces a Hope Merchant's Hood turn, because I don't want to just pass the turn without turning off Blood Debt, because then I just lose Husk. Tom can just do nothing and literally make me lose Husk. So really forced to use resources very, very awkwardly this game, and it's completely my fault because of that horrible early Blood Rush block. So now I'm just in a little bit of a tenuous position here because I am already committed to ramping up the damage, and yet my graveyard isn't very full, and I also am already under threat of Husk. So game is really not looking great. Tom's also sitting very pretty at 23 life right now. So I need to do something to swing myself back into the game. And really, even when you're on a life deficit like this, the benefit to playing against a slower control Katsu deck is just that their damage is never going to be insane unless you just let everything hit. And a Levia deck that's built to block is obviously just not going to let that happen. So at least I'm pretty convinced that I will chip my way back into the damage race, because Tom can't really have that much overwhelming threat just with the way that Control Katsu plays. It's more of a slow burn. So when I come in with the Writhing Beastalk here, it does have the barraging. It is dominated, so it's at least 10, which is a pretty big push of damage here. We're going to go ahead, use a bit of his equipment, and I do chip through enough damage along with that sigil to now put me in the lead of the damage trade, but I'm not too thrilled about having Tom kept that hand. I mean, that to me says he wants to do something aggressive. So this probably means Husk is being committed. From my perspective, that's really all I'm looking at here. And it is fortunate in that I have a Fate Foreseen in Arsenal, because perhaps I can go ahead and use that to protect Husk for 1 more turn. The benefit of playing the Sigil in this matchup as well is that the Kodachis you get to heal yourself back to thresholds where the Kodachis no longer just threaten Husk one by one. So when he does lead with the Kodachis here, I can just take them and really not be scared of Husk and go back to the play pattern of let me just wait for this third attack, the attack that should really scare me because it threatens the mask. It is going to present enough that Husk would be, under threat of being broken. And sure enough, I mean, it is a Surging Strike. So Surging Strike is pretty much the tallest attack that is in a Katsu deck. 5 is where Torn Tempo sits at, it's where Surging Strike sits at, and yet Surging Strike is the more important one to block here. So I am going to go ahead and commit the Husk. But honestly, this is another situation where I could just be playing around something that's not there. I don't remember exactly my thought process in the moment, but looking back at it now, I think the much safer block would have just been Ghostly and Scabskins, because Ghostly Scabs there still gives me the opportunity to go ahead and roll Scabs, because Ghostly would hit once I play the Hungering Slaughter Beast. It would banish the Ghostly, and I can play that back. So blocking with the Ghostly doesn't actually deny any of the damage that I would have potentially had, and it would have kept the Husk alive. So I do just think that was incorrect there. I might have been scared of a Razor Reflex, but of course Razor Reflex can't actually be played on a Surging Strike. So this was just a bit of a fast play for me, I think, not thinking truly through the lines of what a Katsu can do. So when I do roll Scabs, I do get the double action points, which is, of course, something we're always going to roll in this position, because when you have the Ghostly, you do risk the Scabs roll. But like I said, this is something that I could have just done anyway if I blocked with the Ghostly, because I'm at exactly 3 after having played the Ghostly, so I could have just blocked with the Ghostly for the exact same result here. So this is truly just a wrong sequence of lines from me, with the Blood Rush and now the Ghostly. And this is probably because of the long vacation I took. I was a little out of practice, frazzled even from not playing in so long. But we'll get back in the groove of things. We'll get back to being the Levia master that I was born to be, baby. So we'll just sit back and continue to see how the game plays. I've definitely given Tom a chance to win this game. I don't think Akatsu normally would win this kind of game, but with the lines I'm taking, we're seeing a much more challenging position for myself. Other real awkward part is that blocking the Kodachis is something that's very inefficient, but I just have to do it at some point to start feeling grave the way I want. So this turn, even though I'm expecting just pitiful things from Tom, I am forced to actually go ahead and block here, because I just need plays back into Tom. And this is honestly a position where Tom could have just even not attacked, and I think I would have been in a much worse position. But of course, he doesn't know that I can't just instantly fill the grave with a couple things. I might have a Howl. I definitely have the Ghostly already. Might have like a Barraging Sigil, something to go instantly fill grave. So he did just force out some inefficiencies in my blocks there, but at least it means I get playable things. Now, once again, we're always going to roll because Ghostly is there, and when you roll, sometimes there's that incredible payoff to actually hit a 6, and the beauty of Ghostly Visit, honestly, especially when you're running on a very light graveyard, is that you actually can use 6s. If you compare it to when a Rhinar rolls a 6, he is almost never going to make use of that, which is just completely lost value. But when Levia rolls a 6, you're very likely to be able to pull off all 3 attacks, either with a Ghostly Visit, even being played twice potentially, playing it, closing the combat chain, banishing it, playing it again perhaps, or in this scenario we see in my hand, I actually have a Doomsday. So this really is becoming like the best way to spend spend 3 resources you've ever seen. Absolutely love when this comes to fruition here. Plasma Fet is just another reason to always roll Scabskins. It's a free 6 damage, which is even better than Ghostly being 1 cost for 4 damage. So when you start to build up these resources in play, you do force your hand to roll Scabs quite a bit more. So with the fact that I've already rolled Scabs twice now and the payoff was huge, some people would think, oh, well, if I keep rolling, I'm just, increasing my odds of getting unlucky. But that's actually just not how math works. You're resetting the odds every time you roll that die. So I'm hoping to just keep rolling hot here. But if I roll too much, then law of averages is going to come to play, and perhaps just that 1 into 1 ends up biting me. So from this position, I've now clawed my way back, but it really wasn't from any kind of great plays. I made those 2 huge misplays, but was bailed back into the game really by that 6. A 4 would have been amazing. It's still 12 damage. But by presenting the extra action point there to swing the ghostly as well, I'm now presenting 16, which is enough to cement my lead even further and force Tom down to the point where he can't keep enough cards to kill Plasmafett. And Control Katsu really wants to kill Plasmafett because if I've got the scabs up, that is just such insane threat to just always slam him with an extra 6 damage. And this is Blitz, where your life is really, really tight. And Ninja as well just doesn't have great blocking equipment. So the value is always going to be there to just punish a slower deck like this. So Tom really has to be afraid of Plasmafett just sitting there. Of course, it also protects me from ever missing Blood Debt. And I am in a position where my graveyard is very light. So this is just a scary, scary ally to have on the field here. And I love it when Plasmafett instills fear into my opponent's hearts, especially when he looks so darn cool. Love that black border on the promo Plasmafett here. Hope they do more of that in the future. I'd love to even see Levia or Chain, any of the Shadow Heroes in that black border. It looks very, very nice. So on my turn here, we're leading in with just another really, really strong play. We still haven't even seen a Blood Rush, so the amount of pressure I'm putting on without having played one is just fantastic here. The Red Dread Screamer is going to mean at minimum this is another 12 damage turn, which is going to just destroy Tom's hand, pull everything out, and hopefully mean that Plasmafett lives another turn. So once again, always going to roll Scabskins. We have the Ghostly, so we always do it, but not going to hit the extra action point there. Can't get lucky forever, but also didn't get too unlucky in rolling a 1. So, that's just totally fine. We're still going to come in for the 12 total this turn, and even banish the Howl from Beyond, because Plasmafett actually can banish any shadow card. It doesn't have to be an attack. So this is just a free way for me to set up my recursion piece without having to banish it beforehand. Now, since I know that Tom's hand is going to be so committed to defense or either killing Plasmafett, then the amount of cards I'm going to be able to keep means that Howl is just instantly playable from banish. So it's honestly better to have it there than in graveyard. So Tom, I think, really made a mistake here. He went down to 2 life, which means I can always just lethal him with Reckless Swing. So that was just not correct to begin with. But he's also doing this so that he can kill Plasmafett. And I think you have to make the choice at that point. Can you even afford to kill Plasmo, or are you just going to have to keep too many cards and see the game slip away just because of the damage you took right then and there? Because I'm a deck that has a lot of dominates. I'm a deck that has a lot of go wide potential. So by going that low ever, he's basically conceded the game. And even if he kills the Plasmafett, which, of course he's going to do here, and even gets to do some cheeky things by drawing Mask and triggering Katsu if he wants, because Plasmafett will actually take hits of damage. So hit effects will trigger, as long as they specify hit and not hit a hero. So Tom getting a bit of free value here, but like I mentioned, it's really not going to be enough for him to close out this game. Not with the fact that when a deck swings into Plasmafett, you get to keep so many cards, and I'm in a position now where I have that Howl. I have everything I need to sink my hand into nuts amounts of damage. So when Tom played this Mugenji here, I'm actually terrified, because this is another hit effect that if he targets at Plasmo, I have nothing I can do to shut down that hit effect. And a Mugenji will pull out the Lord of Winds, which, isn't amazing in Blitz. It's only 2. But he does have enough cards in hand that he can still make that a really, really threatening turn. So I was surprised to actually hear him say Mugenshi's was at me. I don't think this is just ever correct, because if he gets the hit off on Plasmafett, then when the Lord of Rin comes in, that attack can just be at me. So he's doing this because he wanted cards out of my hand as well as a turn to kill Plasmo, but he's just doing it incorrectly here, which We don't always get perfect games on camera, and that's really because my locals does not like playing Blitz. A lot of people just don't give it any kind of respect as a format. But I thought it was great for learning the game. It gives you a lot of appreciation for the essentials of Flesh and Blood, and really makes trading a key part of the game. As long as you're not just on a completely red line aggro deck and hoping to just keep your hands, not worry about blocking and destroy your opponent, which is actually what we saw a lot of in Briar being so good in Blitz. So, yeah, my locals definitely has not been playing Blitz that much. I am forcing them for this series here, but that does mean we're getting some suboptimal plays on camera. At least in this game, I had two horrible turns, and now we see Tom with his own horrible turn. So perhaps it's evened out, but when even in even games, the ability for Levia to roll Scabskins and make what it was otherwise an even game an unfair game is fantastic. That card really has so much power behind it, and the fact that Levia is a deck that can abuse the action points for so much damage because her cards are so efficient to play, unlike with Reinar needing a lot of cards in hand to potentially use the multiple action points he gets. So we just see the power of it on display in these kinds of games. And now we're just back to kind of the old game plan of let's have efficient plays. Even though I had to block with two cards in the last turn, I get to use two cards in the Dread Screamer and a blue to come in for 10 still, and that gives me a arsenal advantage now, which always great, especially when it's an attack that turns off Blood Debt and one that smooths so well in your Blood Rush turn. So the fact that it is none other than a Boneyard Marauder in Arsenal right here is just the best case scenario, honestly. And when we see Tom just return threat here of nothing but a Kodachi turn, not even the potential to threaten a mask trigger, that's just completely game over for the kind of hand that I'm able to throw back into him here. And this is another really cute part about having the Barraging Beatdowns in the deck, is not only are they burnable, but when you use them on a Blood Rush turn, you just force through incredible damage. And this is complete overkill. I just had the absolute dream hand there of being able to burn his card already with a barraging, discard the Beast Within, and then just slam into him with, at minimum now, Claws and the Boneyard that I've got in Arsenal. Kind of the hidden beauty in that is that even if you draw two reds on the Blood Rush, because you also discarded a Beast Within, you'll have three cards in hand. So even if you draw all reds off the Blood Rush, even if you draw a red on the Beast Within, as long as you pitched a blue to start with the Blood Rush, you still have enough to be able to play the Claws Blood Rush. But instead, we're seeing maximum shenanigans here. Forget the Claws. Who needs 5 damage when you can have 3? Do it for content. Instead, come in for Boneyard Marauder for 11 to end off the turn there. So complete overkill on that. Get the game one under the belt, even with two horrible lines that I took, honestly, with Tom taking a poor one himself as well. So, not the most exemplary game, but we can use this as a way to learn from our mistakes and just not make these issues happen again. So now Tom, losing, does get to choose who goes first, and he is going to pick to go first here because he just gets a free arsenal here, gets a free Tunic Trigger up, and just doesn't have to attack because that's not necessarily his win con. He doesn't want to give me the free cards in grave so that I can force big damage on him this early. So just holding there, I mean, it's correct. It's what you should do when you go first into Levia, and that's why Levia decks, I think, need to be built around going first going forward, because people are getting smarter and they just don't attack you on turn 1 anymore. So unfortunately here on my turn, I don't get the exact line of play that I wanted. I definitely wanted a card in graveyard, so Deadwood is fine in doing that, but I also would love it if I could just get a miss as well on the draw discard effect, because that would set up my graveyard with an extra card, and if you hit, it tends to be on a 6 attack with Blood Debt, and I'm forced to banish whatever card is in a grave. So as we see already, I have now forced Blood Debt upon myself really early, a turn too early here. Now, at least it was turned off, But now I'm basically committed to turning off Blood Debt as soon as possible or starting to take a deadly trickle. And, that's basically a Kodachi worth of damage a turn. So that will actually ramp up to how Tom wants to win this game. So now on my end, I actually am going to start with Scabskins, and this is because I have that Ghostly in hand, so the rule just always is roll Scabs. It's barely even like a greedy thing at that point. It is just correct. But the insane thing here is that not only was it a 6, it's actually an insane scenario where I can use a 6 already this early. That's because my hand is not only set with that Ghostly Visit, which is the reason I did this anyway, it's because the way my pitch is going to work out and the fact that I have a red Deadwood Rumbler means that I can perhaps, as long as my Deadwood Rumbler draws and discards a 6, go ahead and play the Deadwood, discard a 6, banish the Ghostly, and then play that Ghostly right back. So the luck is really, really with me on this turn, which is just incredible. What other deck can just like have stars align like this? It's one of the reasons I love Levia. She has these situations come up that just feel like, you've got somebody's good grace on your side. Things just go so well for you. And honestly, things go well for you more often than the worst case scenario, which would be a 1 into a 1. So as long as that doesn't happen, you are always sitting with some kind of advantage across the length of a game because of Scabskins. So now we're really just seeing it, to its best right now. And when I draw into this next hand, it is just the Pain Train Cometh. There is nothing stopping the insane damage that I'm drawing this game. This is just a turn where I don't even have to care about Scabskins. I probably will roll it anyway because Ghostly is obviously potentially 4 damage this turn. But with this, the Blood Rush and Eye of Ophidia draw, along with the fact that I've got the 6s in hand to go ahead and make the Blood Rush playable, means that I'm going to be able to craft a really, really strong turn for myself here. Eye of Ophidia just guarantees that you get to dig a little bit for that extra blue. And I'm already seeing it here with that Fate Foreseen. It's the blue Wrecker Up. It's definitely what I want. So that's really telling me that because I'm going to keep the blue on top there, I am already basically risking it on that second opt effect on whether or not I'm going to find a attack to turn off Blood Debt. So now that means I would actually prefer to not block with a card from hand, because a lot of the time you are okay to block with a card from hand as long as you have that attack in arsenal to play on your Blood Rush turn. But I don't have that set up. It was a defense reaction in arsenal, so that means I do want to play a bit greedier in keeping this large hand for Blood Rush instead of setting it up with arsenal again. But this is honestly fine. I'm so ahead this game. Really, really pushed incredible damage on my turn 2, and now my turn 3 is just equally oppressive. And Tom is already just not in a great spot. He leaked a lot of damage because that Surging Strike just doesn't block well, so you're almost forced to go ahead and just try to make that some kind of an aggressive turn for the Katsu deck, and it just lined up really poorly for him because I actually had the 6 roll on the Scabskins and really just come out of nowhere with that damage. So now we just see the Claws for 5 coming in, and I actually can go ahead and play Claws into the Hungering if I really want to, but instead what we're going to set up here is actually go ahead and prioritize putting an attack in Arsenal. And this is really because I'm not going to force lethal if I go ahead and swing Claws, Endless Maw. Tom will be able to block it out, and then I'm just at the mercy of whatever I draw off the top to still have a really big turn into him. It would have always been a big turn because, of course, he'd have to block out or die. But by setting an attack in Arsenal here, it's really an acknowledgement that I haven't seen too many cards in my deck yet, and I could just be prone to not drawing a very aggressive hand with my next 4 cards. Like it could be Sigils, it could be nothing but Barragings, but it could also be something nuts like Dread Screamer or Blood Rush, and all of that is unlocked by me smoothing together the whole turns by just having that attack in Arsenal. So yes, I did lose out on the damage last turn by not presenting that extra claw swing, but the damage differential was actually only 2. And that's because Claws Hungering would have been 18, right? Whereas Claws into the Endless Maw is 16. So that card in Arsenal is just definitely worth more than the 2 damage push in that last turn. So these are just the things to think about because I think a lot of players would have just forced it and gone for claws attack there because they are scared to hit anything under that 18 damage per turn. And sure enough, if we look at what I drew here, it is a double red barraging, red ghostly visit, and blue dread screamer. So sure enough, if I had just played into this turn with no arsenal setup, my hand just would have been miserable. So not least with arsenal, I can smooth together what I want. I can now still present 6 damage. I could potentially even roll for the scab skins because I've got the ghostly right. Everything is just set up. But scab skins not going to pay off here. That is totally fine. And now that means I can go ahead and just concentrate on setting up my next round of arsenal cards. What's more important? Is it the ghostly? Is it the barraging? Or is it the blue dread screamer? Because I really have all those options open to me now. I could pitch the 2 reds to play the slaughter beast. I could overpitch like I did here to go ahead, get rid of the dread screamer, set up the barraging or the ghostly. I do choose to go ahead and set up the barraging, and this is really because I only have the 1 red barraging left at this point. I blocked with one of them. I also have 1 Writhing Beast Hulk left. I have both Convulsions in the deck still, and of course I have my Go Wide plays in Dread Screamer and Blood Rush. So from this situation, I'm thinking that the barraging is more likely to have the synergy cards drawn next turn. Blue Dread Screamer is always going to be a synergy card because it just lets you go wide. So that definitely, there's an argument there for setting up the Blue Dread Screamer instead. And I think, in fact, if I'd thought about it a bit more, the fact that there's so many defense reactions in the Katsu list with all the flick flacks, it was just better to go ahead and put the Dread Screamer because at least it doesn't get screwed by having the defense react in Arsenal to just shut down the barraging buff, if I can get them down to just like 1 card in hand. So a little bit of a misread on the matchup, I think, to go ahead and prioritize that, but it definitely has its upsides. So then we do see with this next hand drawn here, it's definitely a position where I roll Scab Skins again, and that's really because I don't have the Go Again in hand to essentially use every single card for an aggressive play. And since Tom did not swing back into me to demand blocks, then I am just stuck in a position where I guess I am forced to roll Scabs. And this is really because even though I have the Blood Rush Bellows in hand, I don't have the attack in Arsenal for me to feel good about whatever I draw off the top actually helping me be aggressive on that turn. So I'd rather wait a bit on that Blood Rush. Just go ahead, burn out this barraging from Arsenal, set the Blood Rush up, and then wait for that hand where I can actually play it, perhaps keep like 3 or 4 cards and just go nuts and make sure that the game's over. Because really, if I'd played the Blood Rush, right, I would have had to burn the Sigil, go ahead, play Blood Rush, pitch the blue, discard the Hungering, and then if I just don't draw attacks, then I can't actually end the game because I would have to swing with that first claw. Tom should probably only block with 1, and then I play barraging on the second claw. It'll still intim the 1, but he should have 2 in hand to turn it off. So that just wouldn't have pushed lethal. It would have pushed probably like 2 damage. So just playing a bit slower, basically guaranteeing that I have the win when I see that proper Blood Rush hand. But we're actually going to see, this is just me, I guess, not looking at my hand. I actually have the Reckless Swing in hand here. It's a hand I just freshly drew, so perhaps I just didn't read through all my cards. But Reckless Swing would have just ended the game right then and there. So we get a bit of a play with our food type situation, which, it's fun. It prolongs the game, but I'm sure Tom would have appreciated it if I just ended it right then and there. Because this is definitely painful. I mean, we're still looking at like a really strong turn. Didn't have to end the game with Reckless. We're looking at a bunch of pressure. We're looking at still just digging through the deck to set up that Blood Rush to end the game. So just didn't need it. But there's no reason not to play it. I had that Dread Screamer to discard. So it's whatever. It's whatever. We play through it. I could have saved Tom like an extra 3 minutes of his life here. But instead we're just going to keep having that Levia fun. Maybe get to roll Scabs one more time. Or get another 6 perhaps. What other crazy things can we do? Can we get Blasphemfed off this game? Can we get Soul Harvest? There's so many lines, so many amazing things. So yeah, why not? Why not take an extra turn? So Tom fully blocks it out here. That's the power of Flick Flack, in that he can cover up what should be some weird breakpoints like in that 4 on the Ghostly. So he's prolonging his life as well. And my turn, this is what I waited 2 turns now for. I have that exact hand that just is nuts with Blood Rush. I can burn out a card in Doomsday. I can pitch a blue. I can guarantee discard a 6. So already we're looking at a minimum of 16 damage, which there is not a world now where Tom can actually block that out. He's got 3 block in his equipment. He would leak damage all over the place with the breakpoints that are coming through. So the poor guy is done this turn. He just gets to decide on which attack he would like to go out on. So would you look at that? He's actually going to go back to perfect reckless swing range. Maybe that's my win con now. Maybe I just wait for second cycle. But no, we push forth. We now come through. Claws. He blocks the 5. I at minimum now have the Blossom Pet for 6, but we're going to keep going with style points. We are going to roll that Scab Skins. This is all a habit forming practice, right? You got to get in the mindset. You roll scabs when you have the free damage, when you have that free 6 cost attacker. So that is all about just forming that habit. The more you do it, the more the deck is going to reward you. It thanks you for playing the lines correctly. And look at that. I get another 2 action points. That means I get a Boneyard Marauder for 11. 11. Not to mention it's going to be followed by a Blasphemfet for another 6. So, yeah, we're looking at a 27 damage Blood Rush turn to end Tom's poor run here as the Katsu player. So, hopefully, yeah, well, it was a fun one. There were some learning opportunities, and you know what? We'll be back for more.